What's up, everybody? It's the Inhuman one here, and today we're going to explore the world of dead cells. In this kingdom, where the land is littered with countless corpses, mutated monsters, and stuck in a perpetual time loop, there's one question that I can't help but ask myself. What is the Malaise? In this video, we'll be discussing possible explanations for the infection that plagued the land and changed the lives of kings and peasants alike. So without further ado, let's get started. My belief is that the key to one of the theories I've developed is hidden in the very definition of the word itself. Malaise actually exists in the real world as a symptom. It's defined as a general sense of being unwell, often accompanied by fatigue, diffuse pain, or lack of interest in activities. In other words, malaise is simply general discomfort. Now, I found this incredibly interesting name choice for the viral, bacterial, or otherwise otherworldly infection or disease that allegedly crippled a kingdom and forever changed and destroyed the population of the island. As the beheaded explores each biome of the island, he discovers bits of lore that attempt to explain the possible origin and onset of the malaise in the form of grimoires, defaced monuments, abandoned laboratories, the last words of dying prisoners, and contaminated corpses strewn about, all of which are inconclusive. In his journeys through the toxic sewers, the beheaded seems to find the source of the initial infection: dead bodies contaminating the water network for the entire island. If these bodies were indeed carriers of the infection, it is plausible to conclude that the source of the water for the island was tainted with the disease, which then spread to the population, resulting in a swift epidemic that came knocking on the castle doors. But even the beheaded questions whether the chicken came before the egg. Additionally, this scenario fails to explain the true origin of the malaise. Let's consider the following scenario. A king's rule lasts only as long as his subjects allow it. Fear of being usurped, assassinated, or overthrown is a very real threat that can jeopardize a life of power and privilege. As with all people in such a position, it's only natural to try and prolong the amount of time on the throne and preserve this quality of life. With this knowledge, any and all parties could prove to be a potential threat. Over time, this can take a toll on not only one's mental well-being, but one's physical health. Imagine being in a constant state of paranoia caused by the fear of losing your kingly rights and privileges that could only end upon your demise, whether it be a result of old age or a less peaceful method of expiration. As the king's paranoid state worsened, so too did his judgment. Over time, the king's worst fears had realized themselves in the most unlikely of forms. Rather than the peasants raiding the castles with pitchforks, a more silent and lethal assassin made its presence known. Individuals living in the fishing village fell ill to sickness. Naturally, the king had to take measures to keep the kingdom intact and prevent widespread infection. So he did what he knew best. He named the new threat the malaise and ordered those who were sick to be placed in holding cells in the prison. Soon after, the king's orders impacted even those who were suspected of the infection. Actual infection was not a prerequisite to a never-ending prison sentence. Before long, the prison grew too full to hold the population, so desperate measures were taken. The king bribed his prison ward to hold prisoners indefinitely, and any escapees were to be killed on sight. Desperate prisoners sought freedom and tunneled to the sewers below, while others headed for the ramparts. Neither plan proved successful. The countless piles of bodies that littered the land were burned to ashes. The prisoners, fortunate enough to have a window in their cell, died of asphyxiation from the endless plumes of smoke. The once proud kingdom was on its last leg. The king's extermination of his people led those in his council to seek other solutions. Unfortunately for the common folk, this led to involuntary experimentation, genetic manipulation, and outright torture. These solutions resulted in aberrations of nature and unnatural monstrosities. In trying to find a cure, the alchemists created a threat to the remaining population that was much more real than that of the malaise. The king witnessed the vile creatures that were once human lay siege to the kingdom. It wasn't long before he sought out a cure for himself, one that would prevent him from being infected. The alchemist was all too eager to take on a new volunteer for his experiments, and then the unthinkable happened. One such failed experiment resulted in an anomaly that transformed the king into an immortal, symbiotic organism that was immune to the alleged effects of the malaise. However, this immunity came at a great cost, including memory loss, increased aggression, and losing his physical form. Most interesting of all is that the validity of the malaise is questioned all throughout. There is no true indication of its presence or effects. In fact, the alchemist was the one who used a mysterious sap that was suspected to be the origin of the malaise as a cure for it, for those who were suspected of infection. The results of those experiments were responsible for the creation of revenants and other monsters of the island. It seems that the most logical conclusion is the simplest one of all. The malaise does not exist and never had. It was the creation of a paranoid king desperate to hold the throne and his kingdom in a stranglehold. This paranoia, along with his violent precautionary methods, created a mass hysteria that infected the minds of common folk and royalty alike. The malaise was the product of this fear and belief in an unstoppable epidemic, despite the fact that it's truly just a symptom defined by general discomfort and unrest. This phenomenon is known as a mass delusion or mass psychogenic illness, which involves the spread of illness symptoms in a population despite the presence of a viral or bacterial agent. In the end, it seems the king's wishes came true. He had become immortal, immune to all forms of death, and he would sit on the throne for all eternity, in a perpetual cycle of death and resurrection. All hail the king. It's the Inhuman One, signing out.